Hey, what's going on there, folks? Good morning, good afternoon. It's the Earth Master here on this Friday, the end of the week, October 4th, 2022. It's about 9:45 a.m. California time. Latest quake shows a 2.0 out on the Big Island of Hawaii. We did see some activity kick up last night around the Baja California region. Kind of want to jump into that right now and take a look at the pressure out here along the western or the eastern Pacific plate and the North American plate out here. Definitely been seeing things ramp up around the California area, but still the San Andreas fault is holding on pretty nicely as far as not wanting to produce that big earthquake that we've been talking about for quite a while. It's been over 300 and something years since we've seen a major quake here along the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault, specifically this area here out in the San Gabriel Mountains, south here to the Salton Sea. And a good portion of the San Andreas Fault can produce up to an 8.1 magnitude earthquake. And that's kind of the number that geologists are throwing around. But when it will happen, who knows? All I know is we've definitely been seeing a lot of activity out here, including that odd 6-pointer off the coast of California here near the Murray Fracture Zone a couple days ago, if you guys remember that. It was a pretty good sized earthquake. And then yesterday, we got a little swarm of activity here in the Baja California area with a lot of inland movement into the Great Basin area and also along the west coast here. Just a lot of, seemed like there was a lot of uptick yesterday. Along with these Baja California quakes. And now we got the 6-pointer in the Gulf of California, 6.1 in the Gulf of California earlier this morning, about 3 o'clock when I was sleeping, as I should be. So definitely a lot has been happening around the West Coast with a couple segments here. You know, as I mentioned, the San Andreas Fault here. The segment right here under a lot of strain. So I'm just kind of wondering, how long is it going to take, folks, till we see that thing decide to go. It's been a while. The slip rate on this thing, I was just looking at an article. Here we go. In regards to slip rate on the yearly basis, the areas in the purple, kind of the darker purple area show the more increased slip rate, more accumulated strain in any given year compared to other segments like the creeping segment here of the San Andreas Fault. Now these guys have this set up here, almost the entire central and the southern segment here as one. They've got it marked as the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault, but technically the southern branch starts right about here on this scale. Now there is a couple different fault systems over here, the San Jacinto Fault Zone and the Elsinore Fault System down here. But the southern branch starts right about here and then goes all the way down to the Salton Sea area. This is kind of the creeping segment. It doesn't really build up a lot of strain. There's a lot of slip rate, a lot of creep, but also at the same time, there's quite a bit of earthquake activity here on any given month, any given day. That kind of decreases the odds of seeing a larger earthquake when we have quite a bit of creep like that on the fault creep. And these areas that don't have that creep, such as the San Andreas Fault with the high slip rate here, notice up around the 40 mm per year range down here, quite high. So 300 and something years. That type of slip rate it's building up, folks. The thing is, how big is it going to be? Could easily definitely be an 8.1. It's been a while. The Garlock Fault is the other one that kind of has quite a bit of slip rate. That's in the purple line here, indicating slip rate of easily 40 mm per year, and that's quite a bit. But notice here along the creeping segment, about 20 mm per year. And along with many different quakes throughout the year, some smaller ones, and even some moderate ones, reduces the amount of potential for a large built-up earthquake. Excuse me. Grab some of my coffee here this morning again because it's a little cold out. Not too bad. Got back down into the 30s overnight, so kind of adjusting to that. And of course, up here in the northern end of the San Andreas Fault, there's some pretty good slip rate as well. Looks like about 35 mm per year, but nothing like down here along this segment of the San Andreas Fault. So I pulled up the last, what I do, 6.5 and above for this area, far as the records go, specifically just for this area around the San Andreas Fault, the southern branch, so to speak. And of course, we've had earthquake activity out here. Last one was kind of north here of the, right around the San Gabriel Mountains, but this segment right here, the southern branch, is still the one that really hasn't seen any sufficient activity in it in over 300 years. But we did have a 7.5 back in 1812 up here on this area, this little branch. But this specific zone is the one we were watching, and there's been activity all around it, but nothing specifically on it. And that's the one that we're watching pretty closely. And it seems like each day that goes by, definitely it's going to happen. Seems like the likelihood is going to go up here with all the activity that's been happening out here around the Pacific and Baja California areas. See what else we got here. A little bit of movement up into the coast range here. North of Ukiah, looks like some small microquakes. A couple ones out there. Not a whole lot going on through Northern California right now, or Oregon. Looks like a little activity around Mount St. Helens again. That is some small microquakes. And also out here around the Washington area, east of Yakima. A couple small microquakes out there as well. Specifically around the Bay Area and central portion of California, a little spotty movement. This is all very typical for this area. And down here into the Ridgecrest area. In Southern California, looks about the same as well. We're not really seeing any swarming yet. I would be definitely worried if we've seen a swarm of activity near the San Andreas Fault here, along with all this activity we've seen over the past couple days. You know, the 6-pointer down here, 6-pointer out in the ocean, and swarm of quakes here south of Tijuana. There was a swarm. I would definitely be thinking that this thing's going to go today, but there's really no major swarms around it, and no unusual activity to note around that segment of the San Andreas Fault. We do have one earthquake right smack dab on it, a 1.0. That one coming in yesterday, though, at about 14 kilometers deep. So eventually that will kick off. Just a matter of time. There's a lot of info, folks, in regards to the San Andreas Fault. You can find everywhere. There's a whole bunch, a lot of info. So there's definitely, let me read something here. I don't know if you guys can see that or not. I'll kind of read it. Segments along the San Andreas Fault exist where no large earthquakes have occurred for long intervals of time. Scientists term these segments seismic gaps. And they try to use that in terms of producing a forecast or a likelihood of something, happening in the near future, compared to normal regular intervals where along the Parkfield section of the San Andreas Fault that's south of the bay sees earthquakes roughly every 20 to 22 years. And I think the last one was back in 2004. So I'm not so worried about that segment of the San Andreas Fault as I am the southern branch. It's just sitting down there like a, it's waiting. The thing is, I think we need something around it to trigger it. The Ridgecrest earthquake didn't trigger that. Of course, that's way up north. But if we get a possibly, who knows what, 4 or 5 around here, I could see that triggering that big one down there pretty easily. Yellowstone, what do we got up here? One earthquake. It says Idaho, but it's technically here in Wyoming, just outside the Yellowstone caldera area, 2.2. Let me bring up, hold on a second here. Let me bring up the Yellowstone overview. There's the 6-pointer in the Baja California area early this morning. Notice the, some pretty good waves there, seismic waves being picked up across the entire area. Almost looks like there was 2 earthquakes involved there from this signature, possibly one here and one there. I know we got the S waves that follow the primary wave, but almost looks like there's 2 of them right there popping up. And that is shown like that on numerous graphs, so a little on the odd side. But as far as seismic activity going at Yellowstone, that's, let me see here. Got kind of an odd reading on some of these graphs, and the odd reading is going to be this one right here. Now, I'm not for certain what struck. Let's go back here to the USGS map and see what else may have struck out here. 5.7. That may be the 5.7, that odd reading. Let's see what time that struck down here in the El Salvador area. Looks like UTC time was going to be 0426. Right? UTC time 0426. So let's see what we got. 0426 right here. So that's going to be that earthquake down south in the South America region that also showed up across the park. So I just kind of look for these odd readings that show up across numerous seismograph stations there, just to kind of pinpoint what it was, what's going on. Because a lot of times we see earthquake activity out here, or deeper movement into the Yellowstone area that's shown up across the park, but not mentioned anywhere on the USGS map. So that's I can definitely disqualify that one far as local seismic activity goes. And literally, there's not a whole lot of local seismic activity at Yellowstone. A couple small spikes here, indicated by those very extreme spiky signatures. And there's a little bit, but things are kind of mellowing out there at Yellowstone as far as that swarm goes. Let's see what else we got here across the rest of the country. A little bit of spotty activity throughout Texas as well. Up north, we had this really weird earthquake up into the Canada region, and we really don't see too much activity up there. The regional map here of earthquakes, 4.5 and above, doesn't show a lot way up here in this area. Looks like maybe something within about 100 miles or so for this area. I think those are earthquakes. Yep. Kind of hard to tell with all the islands scattered out and about here, but it's kind of rare. We don't see too much earthquake activity up there. And 4.7 came in overnight. Been seeing a kind of a trend here with odd earthquakes recently. Alaska looks about the same. Nothing major going on. No major adjustment. No movement that I can see noted on the map. And the Western Pacific remains relatively quiet here across Japan and Kuril-Kamchatka Trench. These earthquakes here from yesterday. It looks like we did have, let me go back here to the newest. We did have a 4.3 about 3:50 in the morning. And that was, 3:50 in the morning. That would be right around the time that, let me go back over here, see when that 6-pointer struck. It was right around the same time here, 3:02. So this 6.1 struck first, and then we've seen the activity over here just a short time later. So, but that's about it. Still thinking here, folks, the Mariana Trench northward for some potential larger scale activity. Just a matter of time. Just like the San Andreas Fault, right? I think each day that goes on without a major quake can only make that next magnitude much larger. Around the Indonesia area, all this activity you see here from yesterday. Looks like one at about midnight last night, 4.4 down here towards the Java Trench into the Tonga area in Vanuatu. Looks like only one earthquake, most recent one, a 4.6 at 220 kilometers deep into the Tonga Trench. What's going on with Hawaii? It's kind of lighting up right now. Notice still got the a little swarm going on up here around Mauna Loa. We haven't really seen anything spectacular change with it. Let's go ahead and check out the volcano hazard notification system here real quick from the Mauna Loa area. And that's going to be through the HVO. Let's see. I don't think they've put out their update yet. Looks like I'm a little bit early. So we'll check that later this evening. This is from yesterday right here, the 11.3. But as far as seismic activity goes, definitely kicking up out here once again. Around Pahala, southeastern flank here, and also one earthquake off the coast at 58 kilometers deep. Goodness. For the specific activity up here, most of this movement very shallow. We did have one overnight, another deep earthquake at 3.7. And I say deep here because these are these earthquakes that are down about 3 to 5 kilometers deep show a trend of magma movement along this area. And most of the earthquake activity we see at the summit are going to be very shallow in the negative. So this here is deep, and that's the areas I want to watch. If we start seeing a swarm of activity around that range again, about 2 to 5 kilometers or so below the surface, that's definitely indicative of some magma on the move. And that's when I think we'll see things really kick back up again and potentially lead to an eruption. But right now, things are pretty mellow, just kind of neutral. You know, they really haven't picked up, and it really hasn't calmed down completely. So I'm still watching the Mauna Loa area. Let's see what we got for the... I'm going to check the live seismographs here. I need to make sure I key up, give Mauna Loa a bookmark here. That way I have that on hand. And we'll check out the seismograph station here. Across the area, last 12 hours or so. I don't know why that thing does that every time I click on it. There we go. Last 12 hours of earthquake activity. Yep, it's still, I'd say it's still continuing there. Definitely showing some seismic activity. And a lot of these little ones aren't being counted. Those are indeed earthquakes as well, but it seems like the USGS only reporting the ones that are, let me go back over here, the ones that are kind of above the 2.0 threshold. Like most of these, well, there's a 1.8 in there. But as you can see, as noted, there's definitely a lot more earthquake activity up there on the map. On the graph here. Goodness. I'm going to have to start my second cup of coffee, I think. Not quite awake. Let's see here. It looks like there was a pretty, it definitely looks like a little bigger one right here in this area. That was about, let's see here, UTC time, right around the 7:45 time frame, looks like. And that one showed up pretty nicely on the graph. Let me see where that's at. It actually looks a lot bigger than the ones they are reporting. Maybe the 2.2, around 0745. Could potentially be it, yeah. So it just definitely looks a lot bigger than the other ones. Pretty much completely cut off out here, indicating a larger earthquake. So either way, definitely watch it. I still think this thing's going to make the news very soon. It's already making the news. I'm starting to see a little bit of little bit of the mainstream media pick up on it, but this activity has been it was heightened back in October. Kind of began back in September, early or late September. Picked up a little bit with the swarming, but it seems like some of the mainstream news outlets are finally picking up on it a month later. But right now, there's no changes with it. You know, I see a lot of articles. Mauna Loa has geologists concerned. Is it ready for an eruption? And you know, swarm of earthquakes. And this activity was at its peak here a few weeks ago. Right now, it's just still kind of staying neutral. But again, we're watching that pretty closely. What do we got? I was just looking up here around the Yellowstone area because there's another earthquake popping up there. Let's see if it's showing up on the Yellowstone map. It kind of looks like it is. Some of this activity right here. Also, Dinsmore over here showing quite a bit of activity. That's the station around the Eureka area in Northern California. Some small specks of earthquakes listed up here along the west coast, but a whole lot of nothingness being reported out here. So not for sure what's going on, but that's the case. Let's see what else we got here for the area. Puerto Rico, getting a line of activity here from about the swarm area all the way up to the Puerto Rico Trench. The latest quake shows a 3.9. See when that one was. It looks like it was yesterday. Yeah, a couple down here this morning. It looks like 333. Goodness. Puerto Rico 3.1 there. Let's see, El Salvador. We did have that 5.7 that was listed up there on the graphs. On some of the seismographs there in Yellowstone showed up. And looks like an aftershock of 4.2 within the Middle America Trench there. South America has been seeing some activity as well. Most of that from yesterday. One earthquake this morning, a 5.0, about 7 o'clock. A little bit further upstream, folks. Here's that key again. You can kind of remember this and make this stick in your brain that these definitely deeper earthquakes tend to trigger. And this is pretty well defined here. These deeper earthquakes put a lot of strain up here around the subduction zone. It kind of makes sense, right? And if there's enough strain, it will produce an earthquake at the surface level. Had two deeper earthquakes, 4.5 and a 4.8 down here, 156 kilometers deep and 113 kilometers deep. And the neutral point up here producing a 5.0 upstream within that deep area. A lot of times you can kind of I wouldn't say forecast, but you can kind of look at areas that may be under the gun for far as producing some earthquake activity. If, for one, there's enough stress built up at the surface, because a lot of deeper earthquake activity happens, and we don't really see any surface rupture or further activity upstream. But if it's been quiet and silent for a while along the locked area, so to speak, and you're still seeing quite a bit of deeper movement, that could definitely be a good sign of something about ready to pop upstream towards where the strain is most built up along that subduction zone. Let's see, the Atlantic Ocean, all this activity here from yesterday. I don't think we've seen anything newer this morning. That's from yesterday as well. So let's see what we got here for the Mount Lassen area. I kind of want to check that real quick, because remember a few days ago we had a pretty good swarm of activity up here. Haven't heard a word about it from USGS or anything. And let's see here, I think it was this seismograph station. Why does it do that? It's kind of weird. Alright, let's see here. So there is the 6-pointer in Baja California, or down there, Baja California, shown up there on the graph. So this one's tuned properly. It looks like one earthquake right here, seismically local to the seismograph station, and that's about it. This is some type of error or adjustment down here as well. Maybe a couple other smaller ones, very small, But still a little bit of earthquake activity up there at Mount Lassen. And I think these guys do monthly updates. This was put out November. Wait a minute here. Goodness, did I say monthly? This is back in 2009. Volcano updates. Lassen Peak swarm activity. So that was back in 2009. They had a pretty good swarm. Earthquake swarms are not unusual. Yeah, it looks like they definitely had some swarms, but so far they haven't done any update with the activity we've seen a few days ago here. So scratch that monthly update off. It just seems like they chime in on Mount Lassen whenever there's some key interests out there, which I think earthquake swarms are definitely of interest to the public and to geologists, but nothing so far on the activity we seen a few days ago. Solar weather activity. It looks like they scratched that G1 storm. Looks like conditions are still somewhat elevated. On November 5th, though, we could see a little bit of elevated conditions there with a 70% possibility of the auroras at the higher latitudes, about 30 for the mid. Looks like we did have a C flare pop up last night, it looks like. Not a big one, C 1.0. I believe that's a 1.0. Actually, it looks higher than that. It's going to be a C5. Down here it shows maximum, but that's probably going to be this little one right here. But definitely seen some solar flare activity, so let's see where this is coming from here. The latest image. Looks like there's a little bit of complex fields here. Notice these blue and orange really close together. That kind of looks like it's amplifying a little bit. And maybe up here as well. A little bit of adjustment going on. There's a big sunspot region coming around the northeastern limb. Can barely see it. That could play a part here in solar weather activity soon. It looks like that's going to be a pretty good active region. We'll watch that closely in the coming days. Right now, 55% chance of a C flare, 10% chance for an M flare, less than 1% chance for an X flare. But that's about it. They do have a latest update out. A prominence eruption took place towards the top of the sun and did fling a coronal mass ejection into space. Because of the event location is directed away from Earth. Bummer. Goodness. So it looks like that was the prominence eruption up here. That's pretty cool looking. I like it when those things happen. Pretty good CME kicking off, but way away from Earth, from the Earth plane out here. But we'll see what happens here. A couple sunspots to watch, and maybe some exciting conditions for those at the higher latitudes and potentially mid latitudes here over the next couple nights with some heightened activity. All right, folks, I'm going to jump off here and enjoy my Friday. Hope everyone does the same, and just stay safe out there. Be prepared. There's definitely a lot going on. Trying to get, goodness, looks like my Earthquake 3D program wants to freeze up again, but I'll fix it here in a second. So have a good day, folks. We'll catch you guys a little bit later on. Peace out.